Institutions strip away people's individuality and their personal value. And once you strip away people's value, then you feel free to do all kinds of things to those people that you wouldn't otherwise do.
Oh, yes, some of the children, like, you know, they used to rock themselves, you know, and they used to move the chairs, and they used to tie them to the radiators and everything, hot radiators and everything. Many a time I used to be in trouble because I used to let them, you know, undo them.
You couldn't say no, and they used to duck your head under the water. And if you said stop it, you took it again, so you had to keep your mouth shut, so you had to get them up full of soap.
You didn't do what they wanted you to do. They used to put you in a padded room, and you used to stay there with like a straight jacket on you.
This is one of the more horrific exhibits that we have in the museum. It's a padded cell. It was used for patients who were extremely difficult or probably very noisy, patients who sometimes asked to go in the cell because they felt themselves, from the tensions that were growing up in them, that they were liable to do themselves harm or do somebody else some harm. So that these were replaced, of course, eventually by the use of tranquilizing drugs. This is an early form of ECT apparatus, electroconvulsive therapy, or electroplexy as it's now called. The various parts here, this is a mouth gag which prevented the patient from biting his or her tongue. This was a device for opening the jaws and preventing the jaws from closing. And this is the headphone, as it were, or headgear, which was placed around the patient's head, patient's temple, and the electric current applied, which gave the electroconvulsive therapy.
There would be two nurses at each side of you, with a sheet under you and a sheet over you, and this was rolled in to allow you to rise when you were given this blast, we'll call it, and to allow you to rise at least 6, maybe to 8 inches off the trolley. And it's very frightening because you're awakened, don't forget, when you go in. You said there was no pre-meds or anything.
Well, they were providing an electric stimulus to the brain, which caused them to have a fit, in effect. And it was during the time that this was so that the patient's condition was improved by the treatment.
The methylated spurs or what have you, it's put on each side of your temple, and I always called them the earphones, and they were clamped on the side of your head, and you're looking, and I always looked over because I may have got different voltage, but the effect to me was always the same. But you saw him setting the dial, and as he set the dial, he gave the nod for the switch where I am, and woof, you were away. Good night. Good night, and that was it. When they gave you your shock and your toes turned up towards you, apparently it was called that. It was a beauty. That was a good one today.
All right, love.
It was the introduction of drugs that transformed the atmosphere of psychiatric hospitals.
Are you all right this morning?
Fine, thanks.
Today's medication regimes are far more sophisticated than in the early 50s, when much drug use was experimental and devastating. Jimmy Lang was forced to take one of the early heavy tranquilizers.
It's sulfonal, it was called, and it was widely used in Gartlock in 1950 and 51. And, of course, Jimmy had to get it too. And so I lost the power of my speech. I couldn't walk. It was such a powerful drug. It was, in its own, called a tranquilizer, one of the early tranquilizers. But although I'd lost my speech, again, if I can use a word, I was fortunate. My brain functioned. I knew what was going on. I was aware of my surroundings. But I just couldn't speak. I couldn't get out of bed on my own, you see. And then again, they reduced it, and I got a speech therapist, and that was back to dog and cat and mat, and what used to infuriate me when in a stage whisper, if you will, isn't Jimmy getting on? He's got through 4 words today, and I used to remember raging inside, furious. How dare they do this, you know? But I got out of it. I came round, you know, and others didn't come round so well because they sat like this for the, you know, vegetated. And it's very easy to vegetate, let me hasten to add.
Treatments took their toll, but it was the institutionalisation of the past that did the greatest damage.
The thing that suffered most was this denial of individuality and the taking away of decision-making from individuals. And having taken away that capacity to function, we therefore said, you're mentally ill, you cannot function, you must remain within an institution.
Follow me, Snow Queen.
For John, for Ethel and Francis, for Geoffrey and for Jimmy, time slipped down the decades and took their lives away. The system had not yet started thinking about getting them out.